Okay, so I talked about Saturn and procrastination. My goal is to sometimes talk about the other parts of planets, the other traits of planets that sometimes people don't talk about, like with Jupiter, right? What do we know? Jupiter, luck. It's the area of your life where there might be some level of ease. It is a benefic planet. It can represent your spouse, depending on the type of astrology you're doing. We know that, right? But Jupiter is a planet of excess as well. Jupiter is a planet that can deal with overindulgence. Jupiter can deal with laziness. Jupiter is kind of like the cheat code because areas of our life in Jupiter, we kind of can we get by, but sometimes it means there is something that we are leaving on the table because we do kind of have luck. It's a cheat code type of energy, right? So you have Jupiter in Aries. Your luck is going to be when you try things first. You have the most energy in the beginning. You have the most energy when something starts. That could be a relationship, that could be a job, that could be something someone gave you to do. There's a kind of explorative type of energy, but the issue there can be not staying long enough. You don't stay long enough to see something come to its full potential. You are good when things first start. Jupiter, you have that enthusiasm, you have that energy, but then over time you lose momentum. You lose the thing that got you interested in the first place. Jupiter and Taurus. Again, if Jupiter is excess, overindulgence, sometimes we're talking about Taurus, we talk about money and possessions. You can accumulate a lot of different things. You already may have resources, but there can be a level of only caring about what's yours. It can sometimes be a person who's overly possessive, depending on what else is aspecting that Jupiter sign, okay? But only accumulating what you have, believing the only things of value, the only things worth putting energy into are the things that you already possess or what you find of value, which can mean missing out on other opportunities. If somebody's in finance and they're like, well, I only invest in this type of stock or I only do this, right? It can sometimes mean you miss out because you're not willing to break free from the kind of Taurus fixed energy of only valuing the things that you feel comfortable valuing, the things that you are the most familiar with. Gemini. Jupiter and Gemini, remember Jupiter rules Sag, the opposite sign. So Jupiter and Gemini it's an energy that's very active, but it sometimes can mean a person who over relies on their intelligence for things. You consume a lot of information, so you may think you know a lot, but you might not apply it, right? It's Jupiter and Gemini. It's like, this person has all this information, are so smart, but it's like they don't apply it. Remember, Jupiter wants us to have experience and exposure, but Jupiter in excess in Gemini means you know a lot of different things, but you get lucky, but then you don't really prepare yourself. It's the kid or the person who can take a test when they're younger and pass it, but as you get older and you have more advanced tests, that might not always work. So Jupiter in Gemini is always over relying on, I already know that, or I'm smart, I already have that. And sometimes you can get away with certain things, but sometimes it can mean that you miss the mark on actually applying all that information to something that's going to help you expand. That's what Jupiter wants you to do. Expand. It wants you to explore. It wants you to be there, to be more awareness, right? But sometimes it can represent like being like not able to really use that information in other ways that can be actually useful. Jupiter in Cancer is exalted. It's a positive indicator, but it can mean sometimes people have a lot of support from people who are like them, people who are from their family, close relationships. You might be getting a lot of love or praise, or something is given or bestowed to you because of what you were born into, where you were born, or something like that. But sometimes, especially what else is happening in the chart, there can be difficulty managing that when you're away from your support system. So though Jupiter in Cancer can be a great placement, you get used to being given things, or you get used to having that support or people looking at you favorably. Does not mean everybody's rich because it has this placement and people are giving to you, but it can mean you have favorability, right? But when you go somewhere else, you have to build yourself up. You have to how to be charismatic, how to be engaging, how to be, enterprising without those people who had your back. So sometimes Jupiter in Cancer can struggle with risk taking when you don't know anybody, like going to a setting and having to, charm people, going into a setting, having to, get people to buy into you can be difficult sometimes if you only rely on, the gifts and the, being liked among people who are where you're from, Cancer energy, who are your family, those types of things. Jupiter and Leo. Jupiter and Leo, you get by a lot because of your exuberance, because you're fun. You are able to kind of make people feel good about themselves. Jupiter and Leo, when I hear the term personality higher, I'm like, does the person have a Jupiter and Leo? Okay. Jupiter can be that, right? That luck. But Jupiter and Leo people can sometimes, the area where you can lack, motivation, or the area where you can overindulge or be lazy is lack of structure, right? Everything's fun, everything's entertainment, but you struggle with things that aren't as fun, aren't as entertaining. You may struggle in situations where you can't rely on your jovialness and your personality to get things done. So sometimes you can struggle in those ways, or you can avoid situations that challenge you in that regard. Jupiter and Virgo. Sometimes Jupiter and Virgo, you're able to see the big, so it's like the big picture. Like you can go into a situation or setting and see the minute details, but you might focus on the wrong things. Jupiter and Virgo, remember Jupiter rules over Pisces traditionally in astrology. So Jupiter and Virgo, the issue here can be not knowing what's truly important. When somebody's trying to get you to do something important, you can't do it, right? But when you go into a space, you can be like, oh, that's different. Oh, that changed. You notice little small things that matter to you, but might not matter in the grand scheme of things in terms of the experience and exposure that you need to have. So with Jupiter and Virgo, it's like that's a great trait to be able to notice things no one else sees. You're shedding light on things no one else sees. But you also can sometimes focus so much on that you forget to actually see the bigger picture and understand things in a more grandiose way that really supports your worldliness, right? Jupiter and Libra, look, always tend to have partnerships or alliances with people that benefit them in the long run, like favorability because of who you're associated with in terms of like money or jobs or success or something like that. But the issue is when that does not naturally occur. Jupiter and Libra sometimes can struggle with situations where they don't have anyone on their side, when they don't have that connection. You have to come with the facts sometimes. It's not just about relationships. It's not, sometimes Jupiter and Libra can kind of come off like, I'm going to overwhelm with you with how excited I am, with how, engaging I am. I'm going to overwhelm you with, look at all these things, look at all these things that I do and that I bring, right? Like, this is great because you're used to people falling for that. You're used to people liking that charm. But sometimes you can struggle in situations where people aren't really looking for you to bond with you. They're looking for you to be able to deliver something. And so sometimes Jupiter and Libra can have a hard time with situations that require them to bring more than just their presence, bring more than just you showing up. And how do you actually learn to work through situations without always having to have some type of connection to people? Sometimes Jupiter and Libra can, depending on what's in the chart, struggle with breaking free from situations that they benefit from because of the fear of, if I go somewhere else, people might not like me like this. If I go somewhere else, people aren't going to love me like this, right? So Jupiter and Scorpio is really interesting, where I see that Jupiter and Scorpio, one can pour a lot of energy into what's difficult, especially earlier on in life, right? But the experience, remember, talk about outer planets, talk about the experience. The experience sometimes can be that Jupiter in Scorpio believes then that certain things are too difficult. I've already did that. I've already had that experience. I've already shed light on what that is. And so we talk about Jupiter planet deals with truth. That's now their truth. And so sometimes with Jupiter and Scorpio, it's interesting where it's not like the laziness, but the laziness part of it is not that they're lazy people, is that there's usually something in their life where they're like, that's too difficult, that's too hard, I've been through it, I did it already, right? And I came through, because we're talking about Jupiter, luck. I came through in the end, but I'm not willing to truly, fully invest all the way in that. Or sometimes you're talking about overindulgence, Jupiter in Scorpio, overindulges in the difficult, complex, secretive types of things, and have a difficulty with transparency because it's this obsession with this idea of things having to be deep and intense in some way, shape, or form. So with Jupiter and Scorpio, it's a very interesting situation because it gets very nuanced. Jupiter in Sagittarius, Jupiter's in rulership here, so very strong placement, but there you can be unaware of your own limits. Jupiter in Sagittarius, and couple that with any other Sag placements, you don't know what you can and can't do because everything is limitless and adventure, and it's almost like you're on a crusade for your purpose. You're on a crusade, but you want to focus on the thrill, the adventure, but sometimes you have to know how to sustain yourself as well. Everything in life can't be a quest and adventure. You have to learn sometimes how, from that adventure, what am I now going to do? Because sometimes you can get so caught up in thinking, you overindulge on the experiences, on the moments, on being invested in something that is going to be novel and new to you, but you struggle sometimes to sustain the thing that's meaningful about that. And at its essence, Sagittarius energy finds meaning and purpose. It's not just about being rogue and going around and traveling and all that. That's great at a surface level, but there needs to be a deeper kind of not psychological, a deeper like philosophical lens to Sag energy if we are talking about it at its highest form. Jupiter and Capricorn, you get really comfortable in your systems. Jupiter, spread awareness, especially if it worked. If something you did worked and expand it to other people, now other people are doing it your way or other people have seen it, they've seen your success, sometimes you stay there. You don't want to really go outside of that realm to see how there are other ways to do things. And sometimes, though you might be successful, you limit yourself because there could be other things that you could be achieving. But you believe that I have success and it looks this one way, so I'm able to stay here. Jupiter wants us to expand. So though you may get to a point in life where you realize, wait, I'm not where I want to be though. Like I am where I've had luck in this area. I've taken my time. I've developed a system. The system works. Other people are using, or other people, other people look to me as inspiration, right? But it also could be projection. Like you're projecting on other people what success is. Okay, I'm Jupiter. I'm influential. I'm projecting, right? Jupiter is expansion. But it's not their opportunity. Like they don't have the same opportunities. Like you might have been granted something. You have luck in that area. So sometimes it could also mean Jupiter and Capricorn. Again, depending on what else is in the chart, struggling with other people because of your belief that, well, I was lucky, it happened for me, so it should just happen for you. And that's really not always the case when it comes to that. At its best, Capricorn energy can be a mentor. Capricorn can show people systems, but that is mostly the sun in Capricorn. That's Mars in Capricorn, not necessarily Jupiter in Capricorn. Unless you are Jupiter and Aquarius with Earth placements, what can be hard is taking on something that you feel is too status quo. What I mean by that is Jupiter Aquarius thrives off novel ideas that resolve some type of issue or problem or address something that maybe includes groups of people. They like things that are inventive. They like things that are new. But Jupiter and Aquarius sometimes can struggle with things that they feel are too prescriptive, things they don't believe in the structure. There could be this idea of like not wanting things to be too basic, too specific. Jupiter and Aquarius, people have had luck doing things their own way. But sometimes you can't do things your own way when you don't know what you're doing. Right? And so that sometimes can be the issue with the Jupiter and Aquarius placement, especially if you have any other placements in chart where you're stubborn or you are, that little bit of ego, right? Jupiter and Aquarius can struggle with like, yeah, you've had luck doing things your own way, but that doesn't work for all people. So how do you learn to understand what each person needs? We're talking about Aquarius. Typically, y'all are going to have some type of connection to a group of people, or you're going to have some connection to the collective or community in some way, shape, or form. And so Jupiter and Aquarius, it's not even like the laziness, but the laziness comes from, I've had luck doing it. I do things my own way. But it doesn't work in all cases, in all situations. So you don't want to get so caught up in that I just do things my own way and I've been successful, I've had luck. There are going to be times where you have to do things the correct way, or you have to do things the basic way until you really learn the systems and understand how to really do it, do certain things so that way you can be innovative. You can, be very influential in terms of how you are restructuring something that you think needs to be better. Jupiter and Pisces energy is very beautiful. Jupiter is the original ruler of Pisces. But sometimes Jupiter and Pisces, again, you've had this luck, you have maybe a strong sense of faith, you have a strong sense of like spirituality, or you have a strong sense of understanding the interconnectedness of the world. But you can have an inability to relate. You have an inability sometimes to understand how to look at things from a more strict or logical or a direct lens. Jupiter wants to expand and wants to, be open to seeing all the things in the world. Pisces feels on a level of, yes, collectivism, the spiritual gateways, understanding how we're all connected, compassion, all of those things. But when you have Jupiter and Pisces, sometimes you don't understand that's not always how the world works. So Jupiter and Pisces can get really bogged down easily, jaded. Depends on what else in your chart, but Jupiter and Pisces can get really jaded, especially if you had experience where you're trying to uplift people, you're trying to help people, but you keep getting disrespected. You keep feeling like people aren't actually, respecting what you're doing. So it does require a certain level of reality check for sometimes the Jupiter and Pisces. And as a spiritual person, I don't like saying people that rely on faith too much, but Jupiter and Pisces can rely on faith too much. You can't pray it away. Can't pray it away all the time. Prayer and, whatever y'all want to, prayer and affirmations or spells or rituals, yes. But there's also this reality, this realm, this earthly realm. We have to then take responsibility for things. Sometimes Jupiter and Pisces energy can get a little disconnected from the actual law and rule of the land, the rule of earth, the earthly things, in favor of things. Well, my life has been fine and I've had all these things and everything has been great for me, but you want to make sure that's not stopping you from achieving the things you want to do because you're not also balancing your spiritualism with reality. Jupiter and which area of your chart you spend a lot of time being enthusiastic, optimistic about, where you have the most energy versus the opposite house of that, where you may not have as much energy. So we know Jupiter, luck. People talk about spouses in Jupiter, but the other end of Jupiter is also this idea of Jupiter is excessiveness. It could do with gluttony. Jupiter can deal with areas where you may overindulge, areas where you're lazy because you have so much luck. Jupiter in the first house, you're going to spend a lot of energy on showing up as who you are and showing a lot of energy in your identity. A lot of, sometimes people with Jupiter in first house take up a lot of space. So it may not necessarily mean like it could be your personality, it could also be your size. Maybe you're, a bigger person. But Jupiter, Sag, Moon, like all of those types of things can indicate someone that may have like a tendency to gain weight or whatever the case may be. But Jupiter in first house, you spend a lot of time thinking about yourself or how you want to show up in the world or what it is people like about you. Jupiter can be exuberant, it could be joyful, it could be optimistic, it could be risk taking, right? But if there's in your seventh house, across from your seventh house, if you have seventh house placements, may be a little different. No seventh house placements, it can mean the way you show up in your relationships though is different, right? So even if you do have a planet there, maybe you have Saturn in your seventh house. So you're excited about yourself, you show this energy, but then you get in a relationship and there's a different side of you. Maybe you're more serious, but also maybe you're more limited. So a person in a relationship with you could be like, whoa, you're so exciting person. You're so interesting. You're so engaging. You take on so many different things. But then the relationship, you might not have as much energy to do that, or you might not come off as optimistic in that. So it just represents like balance, learning to balance those things. Jupiter in second, you might be very self-sufficient. You might have had luck. Maybe you started working at an early age. Maybe you felt like a success at an earlier age, or you felt success like making your own money. Eighth house, the opposite house, obviously. It can mean, though, you struggle to take on investments. You struggle to invest. You might stay where it's safe. You struggle to take on things that may help you transform a little bit more financially. There might be a great partnership or a great opportunity, but you're afraid to join assets with somebody, right? So it could be Jupiter in second house, you get married or something like that, and you're like, well, no, I don't want to join assets. No, I'm not going to. Maybe it's beneficial for you to do it, but you don't want to do it. Not saying you have to, it's your business. But the opposite house would show that this area of the eighth house is where you're lacking a little bit in. You're lacking the ability to transform things. You might be like, I have enough. I'm fine. I've been lucky. Nothing bad's happened to me, but you could have more. Jupiter in third, as we know, Jupiter rules the ninth house in astrology, so that's the opposite house thing. Jupiter in third can mean you know a lot of things. You might be really smart about things you have access to. You might do really well in school. But ninth house, you might not be worldly. You might not know, because Jupiter's across from that at ninth house, right? You might not have a lot of experience about the world, but you know a lot about your locale. You know a lot about your neighborhood. You know a lot of, from learning from books. Again, you might have planets in ninth house, but that's different. But it means if you're too into that third house, it means you need more opportunities and experiences through the ninth house to travel, to be worldly, to study under someone else, or to just simply break free from like, well, I know that because I read it, right? Jupiter can be excessive, and sometimes you can have like the know-it-all energy when you're dealing with Jupiter and Gemini, or any type of energy. Even if you have Mercury in the ninth house, sometimes you can get that too, that opposite house type of situation. Jupiter in fourth, you might know how to take care of the whole family. You know how to take care of everybody, but you're neglecting your 10th house unless you have placements there. You are maybe your rich auntie, or you are someone you just love the kids all come to your house, maybe your grandma or something like that. I don't know. But you're all, or people love you, your family, like you make everybody feel better about themselves, whatever the case may be. But your goals, 10th house, you sometimes can struggle with actualizing your own goals, your own ability to pass things on that you are proud of in terms of your personal legacy, in terms of your career, or in terms of your goals. I'm not saying Jupiter in the fourth, none of this is bad. I'm not saying bad placements. I'm just giving you another angle of the astrology of it, that if you have Jupiter in your fourth and nothing in your 10th, it can mean you're spending so much of your energy and you're so optimistic about fourth house things. If you're having trouble with careers because you're spending so much time there, doesn't mean you can't be there, but you also have to learn to balance that out. Jupiter in fifth can just be really preoccupied with their own hobbies and the things that they like. But you may not reach a group. You may not have a group, because 11th house, right? It's across from 11th house. So you might not be able to impact groups of people. You may feel a lot of times like nobody, this is the person's chart. Like some people's charts, Jupiter in the fifth house, they love what they love. But they're like, but nobody, I don't have anybody else that I can connect to, or they might think they're the only person that likes certain things like that. Depends on, I guess, the rest of the chart. But when your fifth house is all the things personally that you enjoy, but the 11th house is reaching out to other people. It's not just about enjoying things. How do you learn to really talk to people or engage with people in ways in which they understand you and how you can become a part of something greater than yourself? Okay. About building community. And it's not just about, so it might be as simple as sharing your hobbies or being a part of something that joining a group or doing something with a group of people as opposed to only doing it by yourself and having this level of excitement, enthusiasm. I'm not saying you have to join anything, but I'm saying if you have Jupiter fifth house, the 11th house could be the area that you're neglecting, which is your friendships, your associations, or your networks. Sixth house, Jupiter, you are good with daily tasks. You're good at getting things done. You are good at what is literally in front of you, the task list. You struggle with your dreams, 12th house. You struggle with the things you want to do. You struggle with your desires. You struggle with really actualizing the things that are hidden, but actually could help you feel a greater sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in the life that you live. Seventh house, talked about the first house, right? Seventh house, you may have luck with partners or luck in attracting people. Seventh house, not always romantic partners, one-to-one relationships, exciting relationships, ones where you learn from other people. You might feel a lot in your relationships energized, but your first house, especially if it's empty, self-actualization is missing. You might be a person that only feels energized and, excited. That Jupiter, when you're in a relationship or when you're with another person. But when you're alone, I'm not sure. Whether you're single or you're just by yourself or you're not with a group of people, you sometimes can struggle to really show up and show that part of yourself. Again, I'm not saying that's bad or negative. I'm not doing a chart reading right now, but I'm saying if you have Jupiter there, seventh house, it can represent you feel more excited or more open. You feel like you're having these experiences when you're with other people. But if your first house is empty, it could be a struggle to really show up and show that true pride and enthusiasm for who you are, your identity, the way in which you choose to, contribute and really show people, this side of you. Show people, how you want to be viewed and perceived. Eighth, opposite of second, you might benefit a lot from other people's money, other people's benevolence, other people's, access to other people's money, wealth, but you may struggle with second house to do it on your own. And again, it depends on if there's other placements there, but if it's empty especially, you could struggle to do things on your own. You could struggle with, making your own money, or you could struggle with, the value of your own money. You might. Ninth house. You do really well with things that are abroad. You do really well with understanding things. Jupiter is there. You do really well with expansion, but you may struggle sometimes to stabilize yourself in your immediate life. You might be running away from the things that are the most direct in your life. You run away from experiences that are familiar. You run away from people that you've known for a while or your family. You are always seeking and searching something else. Now, Jupiter's in rulership, the ninth house, that's positive, but it can sometimes mean a deficit when it comes to your third house of the way in which you are engaged with people who are familiar to you. You may sometimes have some type of issue from the past where you are you prefer to be away from people who really know who you are because you don't really want to face certain things. And sometimes know-it-all energy with Jupiter, I've been here, I've traveled so much, I know everything, and the third house requires you to study. 10th house, Jupiter, wow, you're amazing, right? You're amazing, right? Or you might have a great career or something like that, or a great image, but you struggle with your family, especially if it's empty. You struggle with really providing that level of support, or you sometimes may see that it doesn't really give you a warm, fuzzy feeling, or it doesn't make you feel good about being around them.
If you have Jupiter in the 11th house, it can mean you overindulge in your associations. You bring a lot of energy and a lot of optimism to groups, and it can pull you in. Wherever your Jupiter is, it's where you're going to feel the most optimistic, the most energized. A lot of times, whatever expertise or knowledge that you have, you bring to this area. And so for you, it can mean that your fifth house is neglected, especially if there's no planets there. You know a lot what you bring to a group, what you offer, what lights people up, right? We talk about Jupiter shedding light, luck, and things of that nature. But you can maybe even be successful, but you struggle to know what you really like. The fifth house is personal joy. It is our talents, our hobbies. hobbies. And so a lot of times Jupiter in the 11th can be great, but it can mean people value you, or people place a lot of expectations on what you can give. Remember, Jupiter energy can be generous, where you might neglect the things that are more personal to you, the hobbies and interests that you have that you might like. Especially, this could be more pronounced sometimes in youth, when people are trying to understand where they fit socially, and they give a lot to their friends, or they try to fit into certain social networks. Whereas with the fifth house, it is this confidence and this self-actualization of the things we like, that we enjoy doing. So that's where you can sometimes overindulge in 11th house type themes and neglect the things that are really useful to your own personal development and sense of enjoyment. Now, if you have Jupiter in the 12th house, it can mean you are a person that could have you put a lot of energy into your imagination. You put a lot of energy into things that aren't concrete, whether that is certain pursuits. For some people, it can be even spirituality. It could be some type of religious belief that they have, or something that they hold on to that is not literal, or it is something that requires that faith, that hope, those types of themes. And because of that, what can happen a lot is you're a person that lives a lot in the ideal, in this is how life should be. I'm going to strive for a sense of peace and a sense of the world being at peace, or the world being the way that I want it to be. So you can spend a lot of time in that idealism and that hope, and in going on even internal or external journeys that mirror this desire and need for things to be more open in terms of your spiritual awareness, or in terms of the things that you view as experiences that you think people should have. But because of that, you can struggle with day-to-day things. What I mean by day-to-day things is your 12th house is across from your 6th house. The 6th house is work. Right? You can have a person that doesn't really like to work that much. You prefer to be in your own world. You prefer to do the things that you enjoy. You prefer to expand on the things that you desire and you dream of through the 12th house. And through the 6th house is where we have the ability to do the things that can seem boring or minute or day to day, but are important. And so because of that, you might struggle with 6th house topics. Now, again, this does not always mean that, because again, maybe a person has 12th and 6th house placements. And then of course, in a chart reading, we would analyze what that means. But you're spending a lot of time in 12th house, which means you might be a person that likes the things that you like. You have a lot of energy and optimism, but you can have a really different disposition and attitude when it comes to the 6th house topics, the things we have to do, the things we are assigned to do. You can have a hard time with, work or responsibilities sometimes, because you would rather be, in the 12th house, where you can be optimistic. Not the 12th house isn't about optimism, but Jupiter is. But Jupiter in the 12th, like, you have a lot of energy for the things that are unseen, creating your own world, working on things that are projects that are personal to you, or projects that this feels more important. A lot of times Jupiter in that house could be, this feels like a greater sense of importance to me. I know where this is leading, but a lot of times people have a hard time seeing where Jupiter in 12th is leading. Like, what are you really doing? Because the 6th house is a seen house. It is Earth. It is ruled by Mercury. We get to see the tasks are done. But with the 12th house, Jupiter has more hope, and it is more of like this, you're going to see one day. You're going to see one day, right? So you can see a lot of that with this placement sometimes, and there just might need to be a greater alignment with the responsibilities you have, while still tapping into the things that are ideal and, interesting excursions or journeys that you go through that may be personal in nature.